The planet was called Cora Prime, and it was the most famous place in the entire galaxy. Not because it was beautiful, not because it was rich with resources. It was famous because of what stood at its center. A giant figure made of living stone and light, the Eternal Guard. For 12,000 years, the Guard had stood in front of the Obsidian Gate. It never moved. It never spoke. It never slept. Its body was taller than any building humans had ever made on Earth, 7 meters of ancient stone that seemed to breathe with a soft golden glow. Its eyes burned like two dying stars, and they looked straight ahead at nothing and everything at the same time. Every species in the Galactic Concord knew about the Guard. The Concord was the great alliance of alien civilizations that ruled this part of the universe. They had thousands of member species. They had technology that could break planets and build new suns, but none of them could make the Guard move. They had tried everything. Diplomats came with gifts. They brought jewels from the hearts of dead stars. They brought metals so rare that entire wars had been fought over single pieces. They placed these treasures at the feet of the Guard and asked politely for passage through the gate. The Guard did not look at them. The Guard did not speak. The treasures sat there until workers came to take them away. Warriors came with armies. They brought weapons that could crack moons and ships that could darken the sky. They demanded the Guard step aside in the name of power and conquest. The Guard did not move. When the warriors attacked, their weapons did nothing. Energy beams passed through the stone body like light through water. Missiles exploded against its chest and left no mark. The warriors died or ran away. The Guard remained. Scholars came with ancient codes and forgotten languages. They believed the Guard was a machine waiting for the right password. They spoke in tongues that had not been heard for millions of years. They recited mathematical formulas and sacred texts. The Guard did not respond. The scholars left confused and defeated. Telepaths came to read its mind. The most powerful psychics in the galaxy pressed their thoughts against the Guard like waves against a mountain. They found nothing. No thoughts, no emotions, no memories, just an endless, crushing silence that drove some of them mad. After so many failures, the Galactic Concord gave up. They drew a line around the Guard and the gate. They called it the exclusion zone. No one was allowed within 50 meters. The mystery of what lay beyond the Obsidian Gate remained unsolved. Most people stopped caring. It was just another strange thing in a universe full of strange things. Then the humans arrived. Humanity was new to the Concord. They had only discovered faster-than-light travel 100 years ago. Compared to species that had been traveling between stars for millions of years, humans were like children taking their first steps. Many alien species looked down on them. Humans were small, soft, and lived such short lives. What could they possibly offer? But the Concord had rules about new species. They had to be allowed to study the great wonders of the galaxy, even Cora Prime. The human ship was called the HSS Wanderer. It was not a warship or a diplomatic vessel. It was a research ship, small and old, held together more by hope than by good engineering. Its captain was a man named T. He was in his 50s with gray hair and tired eyes. He had seen many things in his years of space travel, and he had learned to be careful. "Remember the rules," Captain T told his crew as they entered orbit around Cora Prime. "We are here to observe and document, nothing more. No one goes past the exclusion zone. No one tries to be a hero. The Concord has lost thousands of people to that thing down there. I will not add our names to that list." The crew nodded. They understood. They were scientists, not soldiers. Among them was a young woman named Una. She was 28 years old with short black hair and curious eyes that always seemed to be looking for something interesting. She was a xenoarchaeologist. Her job was to study alien ruins and artifacts. The Eternal Guard was the greatest artifact in known history, and she had dreamed of seeing it since she was a little girl reading about it in school. When the shuttle landed on Cora Prime, Una was the first one to step outside. The air was thin and cold. The sky was purple with 3 small moons hanging low on the horizon, and there in the distance she could see it. The Eternal Guard. Even from a kilometer away, it was the most impressive thing she had ever seen. The stone body caught the light of the alien sun and seemed to glow from within. The eyes were visible even at this distance, 2 points of golden fire that burned without flickering. "Beautiful," Yuna whispered. Her colleague Minyu stepped up beside her. He was a linguist who specialized in non-verbal communication. He was a few years older than Yuna, with a round face and glasses that he was always pushing up his nose. "Beautiful and deadly," he said. "Do not forget the deadly part." "I know," Yuna said, but she could not look away. They set up their research station at the edge of the exclusion zone. For the next several weeks, Yuna spent every day watching the guard. She used every instrument she had: cameras that could see heat, sensors that could detect energy, machines that could analyze the chemical composition of the air around the guard. She recorded everything. But more than anything, she simply watched. She sat at the edge of the zone with a cup of tea in her hands and stared at the ancient figure. She watched it in the morning when the sun rose behind it. She watched it at night when the 3 moons cast strange shadows across its face. She watched it during storms when purple lightning danced across the sky. And slowly, she began to notice something. The guard was leaning forward, just slightly, just a little. If you only looked for a moment, you would not see it. But Yuna had been looking for weeks. The lean was there. The shoulders were bent just a tiny bit. The head was tilted just a few degrees down. She checked the conquered records. 40,000 documented contact attempts over 12,000 years. Thousands of photographs and videos. She compared them to what she was seeing now. The lean had gotten worse. Slowly, over thousands of years, the guard was bending forward more and more. Yuna looked at the guard's hands. They were not raised in threat like she had always assumed. They were positioned at its sides, fingers slightly spread, like someone bracing themselves, like someone trying not to fall. "You are tired," Yuna said softly, "aren't you?" The guard did not respond. It never did. But Yuna kept watching and she kept thinking. 12,000 years, standing in the same spot, never moving, never resting, never hearing a kind word. That night she could not sleep. She lay in her bunk on the Wanderer and stared at the ceiling. In her mind, she kept seeing those burning eyes, and for the first time, she did not think they looked threatening. She thought they looked sad. Yuna spent the next 2 weeks reading. She locked herself in her small room on the Wanderer and went through every record the Galactic Concord had about the Eternal Guard. There were thousands of files, reports from diplomats, battle records from warriors, research papers from scientists, personal journals from people who had tried and failed to understand the ancient Sentinel. She read them all. The earliest records were over 10,000 years old. They came from a species called the Velkari who had been the first to discover Cora Prime. The Velkari were proud warriors. They had believed the Obsidian Gate led to a weapon of great power. They sent their best soldiers to demand passage. The guard killed them all without moving. Their weapons simply stopped working. Their ships fell from the sky. It was as if the guard could control reality itself within a certain distance. After the Velkari came the merchants of Solis. They were a peaceful species who believed everything could be bought for the right price. They offered the guard wealth beyond imagination. When that did not work, they tried to offer services. They promised to build monuments in its honor. They promised to spread stories of its greatness across the galaxy. The guard did not care. It did not even look at them. The telepathic collective tried next. They were a hive-mind species who shared thoughts the way humans share words. They believed the guard was simply waiting for someone who could speak its language, the language of pure thought. 50 of their strongest telepaths linked their minds together and reached out to touch the consciousness of the guard. What they found broke them. 20 died instantly. The others never fully recovered. They spoke of emptiness. A void so deep and so old that it swallowed all thought like a black hole swallowing light. Century after century, species after species, attempt after attempt. The pattern was always the same. Someone would approach the guard wanting something, passage through the gate, knowledge of what lay beyond, power, glory, answers. They would offer something or demand something or try to take something by force, and the guard would ignore them or destroy them. It never mattered how powerful they were. It never mattered how clever they were. Yuna noticed something strange about all these records. 40,000 attempts over 12,000 years. Every single one of them asked the guard for something. Every single one of them wanted the guard to do something for them. Not once in all those thousands of years did anyone ask the guard how it was feeling. Yuna closed her computer and rubbed her tired eyes. It was late. The ship was quiet around her. Most of the crew was sleeping. She could hear the soft hum of the engines and the distant beep of machines doing their work. She thought about the guard standing alone on that empty plane. She thought about those tired shoulders and that slight lean forward. She thought about what it must be like to stand in one place for 12,000 years, watching everyone who came to you ask for something without ever caring about you as a person. Did the guard even think of itself as a person? Did it have feelings? Did it get lonely? The conquered scientists said no. They said the guard was probably just a machine, a very advanced machine, but still just a machine. It did not think. It did not feel. It simply followed its programming. But Yuna was not so sure. She had seen machines. She had studied ancient alien technology on a dozen different worlds. Machines did not lean. Machines did not show signs of fatigue over thousands of years. Machines did not have eyes that looked sad. The next morning, she found Minyu in the mess hall eating breakfast. She sat down across from him and waited until he looked up from his food. "I want to go past the exclusion zone," she said. Minyu choked on his coffee. He coughed and sputtered and stared at her with wide eyes. "What?" "I want to approach the guard. I want to talk to it." "Talk to it? Yuna, are you crazy? Did you read any of the records? People who approach that thing die, or worse." "I read all of the records," Yuna said calmly. "All 40,000 of them, and I noticed something. Everyone who approached the guard wanted something from it. No one ever just tried to talk to it. No one ever asked if it was okay." Minyu shook his head slowly. "Because it is a 12,000-year-old killing machine made of living stone. It does not have feelings. It does not care if you ask how its day is going." "Maybe, or maybe that is exactly why no one has ever gotten through." She told him about what she had noticed. The lean, the positioning of the hands, the subtle signs of exhaustion that had built up over millennia. Minyu listened with the expression of a man who was hearing something either brilliant or insane and could not figure out which. "You think it is tired," he said finally. "I think it is lonely," Yuna corrected. "I think it has been standing there for 12,000 years waiting for someone to see it as more than just an obstacle to overcome." "That is a very human way of thinking." "I am human. It is the only way I know how to think." Minyu was quiet for a long moment. Then he sighed and pushed his glasses up his nose. "Captain T will never allow it. You know that." "I know. The conquered will probably arrest you, or worse." "I know. And if you are wrong about this, you will die, alone, on an alien planet far from home." Yuna nodded. "I know all of this, Minyu, but I keep thinking about what it must be like, standing there for so long, with no one to talk to, no one to care. Everyone who comes to you only wants to use you for something." She looked down at her hands. "I could not live like that. I do not think anything should have to live like that." The days passed. Yuna continued her research, but her mind was made up. She watched the guard every day. She studied its face, those ancient features carved from stone that was older than human civilization. Sometimes, when the light was right, she thought she could see expressions in that face. Pain, weariness, hope, but maybe she was just seeing what she wanted to see. On the 47th day of their survey, Yuna woke up early. She put on her environmental suit in silence. She gathered her equipment. She did not take any weapons. She did not take any gifts. She did not take any ancient codes or forgotten languages. She walked to the airlock and found Minyu waiting for her. "You are really doing this," he said. "Yes." He was quiet for a moment. Then he handed her something, a small communication device. "Keep this on. I want to hear everything if something goes wrong." He did not finish the sentence. Yuna took the device and put it in her ear. "Thank you." "Do not thank me. I think you are making a mistake, but I understand why you need to make it." She stepped out onto the surface of Cora Prime. The air was cold and thin. The purple sky stretched above her like a bruise. In the distance, the eternal guard stood as it had stood for 12,000 years, watching, waiting. Yuna walked toward the exclusion zone. Her boots crunched on the rocky ground. Her heart beat fast in her chest. When she crossed the line, alarms began to scream. Red lights flashed on the markers. Captain T's voice exploded in her communication device. "Yuna, what are you doing? Get back here right now. That is an order." She reached up and muted the device. The captain's voice disappeared. The alarms continued to wail behind her, but she kept walking, step by step, closer and closer to the ancient sentinel. At 50 meters, she felt the first wave of pressure. It was like walking into a strong wind, except there was no wind. The air was perfectly still. The pressure came from the guard itself, a force that pushed against her body and mind, telling her to turn back. She kept walking. At 30 meters, the pressure became almost unbearable. She could feel it in her bones. Her teeth ached. Her vision blurred at the edges. Every instinct in her body screamed at her to run. She kept walking. At 10 meters, she stopped. The guard was right in front of her now. Up close, it was even more impressive than she had imagined. The stone of its body was not gray or brown like normal stone. It was black as the space between stars, shot through with veins of gold that pulsed with soft light. Its face was carved with features that were almost human but not quite. A strong brow, high cheekbones, a mouth set in a line that could have been stern or sad. And the eyes, those burning golden eyes that had watched the galaxy for 12,000 years, they were looking at her now, directly at her. She was the first person they had truly looked at in millennia. Yuna took a deep breath. She thought about all the diplomats with their treasures, the warriors with their weapons, the scholars with their codes, the telepaths with their mind powers. Then she looked up at those tired, ancient, impossibly sad eyes, and she asked the only question that mattered. "Hey, you good?" The silence stretched between them like a living thing. Yuna stood there, small and fragile, looking up at the ancient giant who had not spoken in 12,000 years. Her question hung in the air. Simple words. 3 simple words that no one had ever thought to say. "You good?" Behind her, she could hear chaos. The alarms were still screaming. Ships were powering up in orbit. She knew that conquered officials were probably losing their minds right now. A human had broken protocol. A human had entered the exclusion zone. They would be preparing weapons and rescue teams and probably a lot of angry speeches. But Yuna did not look back. She kept her eyes on the guard. The pressure that had pushed against her was gone now. The air felt normal again. It was as if the guard had stopped trying to keep her away. Instead, it simply looked at her with those burning golden eyes that held the weight of ages. Then it spoke. The voice was not like any voice Yuna had ever heard. It was deep, deeper than the ocean, deeper than space itself. It sounded like mountains grinding together, like the whisper of solar winds across empty planets, like the echo of the universe being born. And somehow, impossibly, she understood every word. No one has ever asked. The words hit her like a physical force, not because they were loud. They were actually very quiet, but they carried so much meaning, so much pain, so much loneliness. 12,000 years of standing alone, and finally, someone had asked if it was okay. Yuna felt tears form in her eyes. "I am sorry," she said. "I am so sorry that no one asked before." The guard moved. After 12,000 years of perfect stillness, it moved. Just one step forward. The ground shook. Yuna stumbled but did not fall. In orbit, she knew, conquered ships were powering their weapons. They would be thinking this was an attack. They would be preparing to fire everything they had at the planet to stop whatever was about to happen. But the guard was not attacking. It was kneeling. This massive figure of living stone and starlight, this ancient sentinel that had defeated armies and killed warriors and driven telepaths mad, lowered itself down onto one knee. Its head bowed forward until its face was almost level with Yuna's. Up close, she could see the texture of its skin. It was not really stone. It was something else. Something that looked like stone but felt alive. The golden veins pulsed with light like a heartbeat. "I was placed here by the architects," the guard said. Its voice was softer now. Still ancient, still powerful, but softer, almost gentle. "They were the first beings in this universe. They created many things, the stars, the planets, the seeds of life, and me. They created me to guard what lies beyond this gate." Yuna wiped the tears from her face. "What is beyond the gate?" "Something precious, something that must be protected until the right person comes." The guard paused. "But the architects never returned. They left me here with my duty. They said someone would come to relieve me, someone worthy, but no one came. Year after year, century after century, I waited. For 12,000 years. Yes." Yuna could not imagine it. She had felt lonely before. Everyone had. That feeling of being alone in a room full of people. That ache of wanting someone to understand you. But 12,000 years, standing in the same spot, watching civilizations rise and fall, watching people come and go, and none of them caring about you as anything more than an obstacle. "That is a long time to be alone," she said softly. "Yes," the guard's voice cracked slightly. It was such a human sound from such an inhuman being. "Many came to me over the years, diplomats, warriors, scholars, priests, thieves. They all wanted something, passage through the gate, power, knowledge, glory. They offered me things. They threatened me. They tried to trick me and fight me and control me. But no one just talked to you. No one asked if I was well. No one asked if I needed anything. No one." The guard stopped. When it spoke again, its voice was very quiet. "No one cared." Yuna reached out. She did not know why. It was instinct. The same instinct that made you reach for a crying child or a wounded animal. She placed her small human hand on the guard's massive stone finger. It was warm. She had expected cold stone, but the surface was warm like living skin. She could feel the pulse of the golden light beneath the surface, like a heartbeat, slow and steady and ancient. "I care," she said. "I know that probably does not mean much. I am just a human. We are new to this galaxy. We do not have great technology or ancient wisdom, but I care. And I am sorry you have been alone for so long." The guard made a sound. It took Yuna a moment to recognize it. It was rough and broken and unpracticed. It was laughter. "A human," the guard said. "Of all the beings in this galaxy, of all the ancient and powerful civilizations, a human, a member of a species so young that the stars do not yet know your name. You are the first to show kindness. Kindness is not about how old you are or how powerful you are. It is about choosing to care." The guard was silent for a long moment. Then it spoke again. "The architects told me to wait for someone worthy. For 12,000 years I did not understand what they meant. Worthy of what? Worthy of passage. Worthy of the treasure beyond the gate. I measured worth in power, in knowledge, in ancient blood and noble titles. And now I understand." The guard raised its head and looked at Yuna with those burning eyes, but they did not look sad anymore. They looked different, warmer somehow. "Worth is not measured in power. It is measured in kindness. in the ability to see another being not as an obstacle or a tool but as a person, someone who might be tired, someone who might be lonely, someone who might need to hear a simple question. Behind Yuna, the alarms had stopped. She did not know when that had happened. The chaos seemed very far away now. It was just her and the guard, two beings having a conversation that had been 12,000 years in the making. "You asked if I am good," the guard said. "The truth is I do not know. I have been standing here for so long that I have forgotten what good feels like. I have forgotten what it feels like to be seen, to be spoken to matter to someone." "You matter to me," Yuna said, and she meant it. She did not know why this ancient being had become important to her so quickly. Maybe it was because she knew what loneliness felt like. Maybe it was because she had always believed that every thinking being deserved kindness, no matter how old or strange or different. Or maybe it was just because she was human, and humans, for all their faults, had always been good at seeing the person inside the monster. The guard stood. The ground shook again as it rose to its full height, 7 meters of living stone and light, towering over the small human woman who had done what no one else could do. "You have done something that no one in 12,000 years has done," the guard said. "You have seen me, not the sentinel, not the obstacle, not the mystery, me." "What happens now?" Yuna asked. The guard stepped to the side. Behind it, the obsidian gate stood silent and dark. It was massive, easily 3 times the height of the guard itself, made of some black material that seemed to swallow light. There were no handles, no locks, no visible way to open it. But as the guard moved aside, the gate began to glow. "Now," the guard said, "you may pass, not because you are powerful, not because you are wise, not because you solved a puzzle or defeated me in combat." "Then why?" The ancient sentinel looked down at her, and for the first time in 12,000 years its face changed. The stone features shifted just slightly. The hard mouth curved upward. It was a real smile from a being who had forgotten how to smile. "Because you are kind." The obsidian gate glowed with soft golden light. Lines of energy traced across its surface, forming patterns that seemed to shift and change every time Yuna blinked. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. This was the mystery that had haunted the galaxy for 12,000 years, and now it was opening. Behind her, Yuna heard footsteps. She turned to see 3 figures approaching across the rocky plain. Captain T was in front, his face a mixture of anger and amazement. Behind him came Minyu, practically running to keep up. And behind Minyu was Hana, the ship's medic, carrying a bag of supplies just in case. They stopped a few meters away from Yuna and the guard. Captain T's mouth opened and closed several times. He was a man who always knew what to say, but for once, words seemed to fail him. "The gate," he finally managed. "It is opening." "Yes," Yuna said. She was still looking at the guard. "Because I asked if it was okay." "You asked if," T shook his head slowly. 12,000 years, 40,000 attempts, and all anyone had to do was ask if it was okay. "It was not just the question," the guard said. All 3 newcomers jumped at the sound of its voice. None of them had expected it to speak. It was the heart behind the question. Many could have spoken those words. Few would have meant them. T looked at Yuna with new eyes. He had known her for 3 years. She was his youngest crew member, always curious, sometimes reckless but kind. Always kind. He had seen her stay up all night helping injured animals on alien worlds. He had seen her cry when she read about tragedies that happened thousands of years before she was born. He had always thought her kindness was a weakness in the cold universe of space exploration. Now he understood it was her greatest strength. "What happens now?" T asked. The guard gestured toward the glowing gate. "She may pass, and those she chooses to bring with her." Yuna looked at her crewmates. Minyu was still staring at the guard with academic fascination. Hana was checking her medical supplies nervously. T was waiting for her decision. "Come with me," she said. "All of you, we should see this together." They approached the gate as a group. The golden light grew brighter as they got closer. Yuna reached out and touched the surface. It was warm like the guard's skin, like a living thing. The moment her hand made contact, the gate began to open. It did not swing open like a door. It did not slide aside like a hatch. It simply dissolved. The black material faded away like morning mist in sunlight, revealing what lay beyond. Yuna had expected many things. A weapon, perhaps. The conquered had always believed the gate hid some terrible power, or maybe a treasure vault filled with alien gold and jewels, or a prison holding some ancient evil, or just an empty room, the biggest joke in galactic history. She had not expected a garden. The space beyond the gate was massive, bigger than any building Yuna had ever seen, bigger than some cities. It stretched in all directions as far as she could see, and it was filled with life. Plants grew everywhere, not just one kind but thousands of different kinds, trees with silver bark and purple leaves, flowers that glowed with inner light, vines that spiraled up into the air without any support, mushrooms the size of houses, grass that rippled like water. And creatures moved among the plants, small animals with too many legs, birds with wings like stained glass windows, things that looked like floating jellyfish drifting through the air, things she had no words for at all. Hana dropped her medical bag. Her hands were shaking as she covered her mouth. "This is impossible," she whispered. "Some of these plants, some of these animals, they are extinct. They have been extinct for millions of years." She was right. Yuna recognized some of them from her studies. Species that had died out when their home worlds were destroyed. Species that had only survived in ancient records and genetic databases. Species that scientists had mourned for generations. They were all here, alive, growing, thriving. The architect's final gift, the guard said. It had followed them through the gate. For the first time in 12,000 years, it had entered the space it had been protecting. A seed vault for the universe itself. When they knew they were dying, they gathered seeds from 1,000 worlds, plants, animals, the building blocks of life. They stored them here where time moves slowly, where nothing can decay, where everything can be preserved. "A seed vault," Minyu said quietly. He pushed his glasses up his nose. They were not hiding a weapon. They were protecting hope. T walked forward in a daze. He reached out and touched a flower that glowed like a small sun. It was warm against his fingers, real, alive. "This changes everything," he said. "These species, we could bring them back. We could restore ecosystems that have been dead for millions of years." That was the architect's wish, the guard said. They created life. They loved life. They wanted it to continue even after they were gone, so they built this place, and they built me to protect it. Yuna turned to look at the guard. It was moving through the garden slowly, looking at everything with something like wonder. She realized that in 12,000 years of standing at the gate, the guard had never seen what it was protecting. "Did you know?" she asked. "Did you know what was in here?" "No," the guard's voice was soft, almost fragile. "I was told to protect the gate, to wait for someone worthy. I was not told what I was protecting. I thought it must be something dangerous, something that needed to be kept locked away. But it was not dangerous at all. No, it was beautiful." The guard reached out and touched a tree with bark like silver mirrors. Its massive stone hand was surprisingly gentle. "For 12,000 years I imagined what might be beyond the gate. I imagined weapons, monsters, dark secrets. I never imagined this." They walked through the garden for hours. Hana collected samples carefully, her scientific training taking over despite her amazement. Minyu recorded everything, talking non-stop into his device about the implications and the possibilities. T sent a message back to the ship, trying to explain what they had found in words that did not seem adequate. Yuna stayed close to the guard. She watched it move through the garden, touching plants, looking at animals, experiencing for the first time the beauty it had protected for so long. "You should have seen this," she said. "The architects should have let you see this." "Perhaps they meant to," the guard replied. "Perhaps they always intended to return and show me, but they never did, and I never thought to ask. I was given a duty. I performed that duty. I did not think I was allowed to want anything for myself. Everyone deserves to want things. Everyone deserves to see beautiful things." The guard turned its ancient eyes to her. "You say these things so simply, as if they are obvious truths." "Because they are. At least I believe they are. Your belief is rare in this universe. I have seen many civilizations in my 12,000 years. Most of them measure value in power, in strength, in how much you can take from others. Your species is young, but you measure value differently." "Not all of us," Yuna admitted. "Humans can be cruel too. We have done terrible things to each other and to other species, but we are learning, we are trying to be better. That is more than most ever do." The guard paused beside a pool of water that glowed from within. Small creatures swam in the depths, leaving trails of light behind them. "I think the architects would have liked your species. They believed in the potential of living things. They believed that even the youngest, smallest beings could do great things if given the chance." Yuna smiled. "Then I am glad a human was the one who asked if you were okay." "As am I." They stood together in silence, watching the light play across the water. Behind them, the sounds of her crewmates discovering new wonders drifted through the garden. Outside, beyond the gate, the galaxy waited with all its questions and demands. But for this moment, none of that mattered. For this moment, there was only the garden, the light, and two beings who had found understanding in the most unlikely place. "What will you do now?" Yuna asked finally, "now that the gate is open?" The guard was quiet for a long time. When it spoke, its voice held something new, something that might have been hope. "I do not know. For 12,000 years I knew exactly what my purpose was. Stand at the gate. Wait for someone worthy. Now that purpose is fulfilled. I am not sure what comes next." Yuna reached up and placed her hand on the guard's arm. It was warm, alive. Despite everything, despite all the years and all the loneliness, still alive. "Maybe," she said, "you could stay here in the garden. You protected it for 12,000 years. Maybe now you could finally enjoy it." The guard looked down at her, and for the second time it smiled. "Perhaps I could." Word spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. The Eternal Guard had moved. The obsidian gate was open, and it had been done by a human, not a great warrior or a powerful diplomat or an ancient scholar, just a young woman who had asked a simple question. The Galactic Conquered did not know how to react. For 12,000 years, they had told stories about the gate. They had sent their best and lost their brightest. They had declared the mystery unsolvable. And now a species that had only been traveling between stars for 100 years had done what they could not. Some were angry. How dare these young upstarts succeed where the elder races had failed? There must be some trick, some cheat, some secret advantage the humans were hiding. Investigations were demanded. Accusations were made. Politicians gave speeches about the need to control human expansion. But most were simply amazed. When the recordings from Cora Prime were shared, when people saw the guard kneel and heard it speak, when they saw the garden beyond the gate, the anger faded. Something else took its place. Something that felt almost like hope. If the oldest mystery in the galaxy could be solved with a simple act of kindness, what else might be possible? On Cora Prime, the changes came slowly. The Conquered sent official delegations to study the garden. Scientists from 100 different worlds came to catalog the preserved species. Diplomats came to discuss treaties and agreements about who could access the vault and how the seeds would be shared. Through it all, the guard remained. Not as a sentinel anymore, not as an obstacle, just as a being who had found a new purpose after 12,000 years of waiting. The guard walked through the garden every day. It learned the names of every plant and animal. It watched seeds sprout and flowers bloom. Sometimes it would stand for hours just looking at a single tree, marveling at something it had protected for so long without ever knowing its beauty. Yuna visited as often as she could. The Wanderer had moved on to other missions, but she always found her way back to Cora Prime. She would sit with the guard in the garden and talk for hours, about her work, about her life, about her hopes and fears and dreams. The guard listened to everything. It asked questions with the curiosity of a child discovering the world for the first time. What did human food taste like? What did it feel like to sleep and dream? What was love? What was family? What was home? Yuna answered as best she could. She told the guard about her parents back on Earth, about her sister who she had not seen in years, about the small apartment she kept in a space station that she barely ever visited. She told it about her happiest memories and her saddest ones. She told it about the time she first saw the stars and knew she wanted to explore them. In return, the guard told her about the architects, about being so old and wise that they had watched the first galaxies form, about their great works and their quiet failures, about the day they had created the guard and given it a purpose, about the loneliness of watching them leave and never come back. "Do you miss them?" Yuna asked once. "I do not know," the guard admitted. "I am not sure I knew them well enough to miss them. They created me, they gave me instructions, then they left. Perhaps they cared about me. Perhaps I was just a tool to them. I never had the chance to find out. I am sorry." "Do not be. For 12,000 years I thought about what it would mean if they returned. I imagined them thanking me for my service. I imagined them telling me I had done well. But now I realize that I do not need their approval. I did my duty. I protected what they valued. And in the end, I found something they probably never expected." "What is that?" The guard looked at her with those ancient golden eyes that had seen so much. "A friend." Years passed. The seeds from the architect's vault were shared across the galaxy. Species that had been extinct for millions of years walked on new worlds. Plants that had only survived in memory grew in new soil under new suns. The gift of the architects spread life through the universe in ways they had never imagined. And through it all, the question spread too. Yuna's question, the question that had done what no army could do. "You good?" It became a phrase, a symbol. Diplomats would begin difficult negotiations by asking it. Scientists would say it to each other before sharing competing theories. Strangers on different worlds would use it as a greeting. It was simple and strange and somehow perfect. The philosophers of the conquered spent years trying to understand why those words had worked when nothing else had. They wrote papers and held conferences and created theories that filled libraries. Humans did not understand the question, did not understand the humans themselves. How could such a young and short-lived species understand something that the ancient civilizations had missed? Yuna was asked this question many times. Reporters and scholars and curious beings from every corner of the galaxy wanted to know her secret. What made humans different? What special quality did they have that let them see what others could not? She always gave the same answer. "We are not special," she would say. "We just remember what it feels like to be alone, to be forgotten, to stand in one place for so long that you forget what it feels like to be seen. Humans have done terrible things, but we have also known terrible pain, and that pain taught us to look for pain in others. That is all kindness is, remembering your own suffering and not wanting others to feel the same." Not everyone believed her. Some thought there must be more to it than that, some secret human ability, some hidden power. But the guard believed her, and in the end, that was the only opinion that mattered. The guard lived for many more centuries after the gate opened. It stayed in the garden, tending the plants, watching over the animals, enjoying the beauty it had protected for so long. Human researchers came and went. Some stayed for years. They would always take time to sit with the guard and talk. And they would always start the same way. "You good?" The guard would always smile. That small, ancient smile that it had learned from a young human woman who had seen loneliness in its eyes. "Yes," it would say, "I am good." When Yuna grew old, she returned to Cora Prime one last time. Her hair was white now. Her face was lined with years of smiles and tears. Her body was fragile in ways it had not been when she first walked across this rocky plain so many decades ago. But her eyes were the same, curious, kind, always looking for something interesting. The guard met her at the edge of the garden. It knelt down so she could see its face. After all these years, the lean was gone. The stone shoulders stood straight. The weight of loneliness had finally lifted. "Thank you," the guard said. "For what?" "For everything, for asking that question, for seeing me when no one else could, for teaching me that it is okay to want things, to feel things, to care about things beyond my duty." Yuna reached up and touched the guard's face. Her old hand trembled, but her touch was gentle. "Thank you for answering. Thank you for letting me in. Thank you for showing me that kindness matters, even across 12,000 years. Kindness always matters. You taught me that." "No, you taught me, by still being there, by not giving up, by keeping hope alive even when no one gave you any reason to." They sat together in the garden one last time. The plants glowed around them. The creatures sang their strange songs. The light of a distant sun filtered through leaves that had been preserved since before humanity existed. Yuna closed her eyes and listened to the heartbeat of the garden. She thought about all the years, all the wonders she had seen, all the beings she had met, and she smiled. "You good?" she asked softly. The eternal guard, the ancient sentinel who had stood alone for 12,000 years, who had been saved by the simplest question ever asked, looked at the old woman who had become its first and truest friend. "Yes," it said, "I am." And in the garden of the architects, surrounded by the seeds of 1,000 worlds, the two of them sat together in peaceful silence, needing nothing more than each other's company. That was enough. That had always been enough.